Hello and welcome to aerobic capacity screencast. So what we're on at the moment then, we've looked at our kind of energy systems and recovery. Our next focus is to look at the kind of different systems and different training types. So we're going to look at aerobic capacity, we're going to look at strength, and we're going to look at flexibility. So your first key area is aerobic capacity. So in relation to what you might call this before, cardiovascular endurance, aerobic endurance, basically your kind of aerobic fitness. So what we're going to have a look at is specifically kind of this concept of VO2 max. This is the way that you measure how aerobically fit you are, and there are certain tests that we're going to have a look at down here that evaluate how fit you are. On top of that, we're going to look at your aerobic fitness level, how fit you are, can be dictated by certain factors. So certainly on tonight's screencast, we're just going to have a look through what the definition is of VO2 max, as that is the measure of your aerobic capacity. Then we're going to have a look at these factors that influence it, and then have a look at how you measure it. Now you will all have done this at school, I would have thought. If not practically, you would have done it at GCSE. And then tomorrow's lesson, we'll have a look at the different training types that people can use to actually develop this. So on we go then, VO2 max. So what is it? This is the key definition you will need. Oh, sorry, that's not VO2 max. Aerobic capacity first up. So aerobic capacity is the whole overview of the unit, is your ability to take in and use oxygen over into kind of sub-maximal work. Now, the difference between that going on to VO2 max is that this word maximum comes in. So what we're saying then, it's the highest rate of oxygen consumption during exhaustive work in 1 minute. So it's basically saying how hard can you work when you're at your absolute, when you're knackered. So that's how you write it. That would certainly be, to me, your first core down note will be based on VO2 max. Okay, this is the definition you will need to learn. This is how it's measured, if you can just make a note of that, and we'll have a look at that when we actually do some practical application of this. There are certain factors that are going to affect your VO2 max, and they are training. So that would make sense. If your training aligns to improving your VO2 max, then you're more likely to do it. If you, for example, go in and say, right, I'm going to go and do 20 sets of bench press tonight, that's not going to improve your VO2 max. It's not going to improve your aerobic capacity. So you have to make sure that your training is specific and it aligns to what you're trying to do. E.g., you'll be doing some kind of running, cycling, rowing at 60 to 80% of your maximum heart rate. Next factor is to do with age. Now, as you get older, certainly, from the age of 30, every year you're 1% decrease in your VO2 max, and that's due to the fact that your kind of ventricles lose their contractility, so they can't stretch as much. So that stops you from being able to increase your stroke volume, cardiac output, etc. Next one, looking at genetics. So your genetic makeup, depending, as we looked last year at your mix of muscle fibres, will dictate how high your VO2 max is. If you have a high percentage of slow twitch muscle fibres, then you're more likely to have a high VO2 max. So that would obviously be the contrasting view if you had a high percentage of fast twitch muscle fibres. So as we're talking about aerobic capacity, we'll keep it linked to slow twitch muscle fibres. Final one then is gender. So when you're looking at gender, okay, you're looking at females having, as it says there, 25% less than males due to smaller body size and increased body fat storage. So they are the key factors. They are the reasons that dictate how high your VO2 max is. So again, core down notes will need to be made on these key focuses. You need your descriptions here, and they should form your questions. Last little section we'll look at tonight then, there are ways of measuring it. Now you will all have heard of the bleep test. At A2PE you have to know that that is called the multi-stage fitness test. So what do we need to know? You need to be able to evaluate it. So what we're looking at, first of all, this is how you describe it. So progressive test to exhaustion between 20 meter markers. Now with a bleep obviously to symbolise when you should be turning. Now the good thing about this is it's valid, it measures what it's supposed to measure, and if you do it over and over again it's going to be the same. Now it's not suited to all sports, because obviously if you're a rower you have a very specific type of aerobic capacity or VO2 max, and it doesn't involve running. Okay, likewise cycling. Going on, the P WC 170, so your physical work capacity 170 test. Now you have to know it's PWC 170, so what it is, it's a sub-maximal test. You will go on there 3 low to moderate intensities, and then what happens is you get your heart rate recorded. From that, people will kind of estimate what your heart rate's going to be at, your intensity level will be at 170 beats per minute. So that's one other way. Obviously, it is valid and reliable, but it's not actually a measure of VO2 max, and the key to that comes in the fact that it's not maximum, it's sub-maximal. So it is a measure, so it's something we have to talk, and it is an example of something you could do at the start of an aerobic capacity test. Last one, or penultimate one we'll look at, gas analysis test. So this one is basically looking at you being wired up. What will happen on this, the computer will analyse how much O2 you take in, and how much CO2 you get rid of, and that will help predict, and you'll plot it on a graph, and that will help predict how good your VO2 max is. So valid and reliable, but it's expensive. Last one is the 12-minute Cooper's run. So description of that is pretty straightforward. I'm sure you've all done that. You run for 12 minutes. You have a meter, how many meters you've run at the end, and that can be equated to your VO2 max score. So what I'm expecting from tomorrow is kind of, and if we put this into context, we've got this thing, if we go back to the start point and say, right, aerobic capacity, we all need it. If you're taking part in a game that lasts kind of over 3-4 minutes, which most of us are, then you need aerobic capacity. What we need to know then is, first of all, what it is, or VO2 max is the way it's measured. Then we need to know what things can dictate or affect you and your VO2 max. And this is really important, because if, for example, your coach at the start of the year, for example, whenever anybody comes to start of a pre-season, if it's a pre-season that's done properly, they will have a test to evaluate how aerobically fit you are, and that will be done via usually multi-stage fitness test, or, as is more common nowadays, something called the yo-yo test. Now that is vital because it gives coaches a baseline as to what the fitness levels are at the start of a pre-season. They will then have a look at this area here, start to use training types to try and improve what score they got there, and then at the end of the pre-season training block there might be a retest using the same test to see if the training has had the desired effect. So that's how it fits in to the big picture in terms of your performance or elite sports performance. What we'll do after this is start to look at this key bit here. If you take part in a 6, 8, 10, 12 week aerobic capacity training program, what physiological things change? You might remember some stuff from last year. So please make your notes on that, and I shall see you tomorrow.